Graduate School. My name's Mike Finnegan, and I am here today with
Kylie Moody. Sorry, I didn't know if you were going to say my name. So, hello.
gang. We are super excited. Myself and Kylie are super excited to be hanging out with you this evening. Largely because we get a chance to talk about strengths. And when we get a chance to talk about strengths, we get a chance to talk about what it is that we do best more often than not, which hopefully if we play to our strengths, it puts us on top of the world. Hence the little music intro by Imagine Dragons. I got to give a quick shout out to Kevin. Kevin, I miss you, my friend. I remember back in the days when we were hanging out in leadership and practice. Life is good. But hey, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen because Kylie and I have an opportunity to work you all through the strengths philosophy. And I guess just a quick little caveat and or words of encouragement. This will be interactive, and so we hope to do some breakout rooms. And when we do jump into breakout rooms, Kylie and I would love it if you have an opportunity to turn on your camera, please do, so you can connect to other grad students on the call as we talk about our strengths in action. And so, I just got muted. Okay, I'm good to go now. With that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right, y'all. So myself and Kylie are excited about this. This workshop tonight is sponsored by the Staley School of Leadership Studies. We house the K-State Strengths Initiative, where we focus on helping to develop people's strengths, and we aim that at both engagement and well-being. And so our mission statement is developing knowledgeable, ethical, caring, and inclusive leaders for a diverse and changing world. And if you want to know more about what we do at the Staley School of Leadership Studies, we'd be happy to inform you about that. But gosh, my name is Mike Finnegan. I'm on faculty with the Staley School of Leadership Studies, and I've been teaching for the last 15 years and then doing strengths work on campus for the last 10.
And hello, I'm Kylie Moody, and I serve as Managing Director of Scholar Services in the Academic Achievement Center, and have kind of been involved with strengths since it got started at K-State, and it is also a passion area for me as well. And I have had the opportunity to teach as an adjunct in the Staley School of Leadership Studies. So welcome.
All right. So gang, my gosh, there's been a lot happening in the last 12 months since last spring. And so to get this party started tonight, y'all ready for this? No, I don't think anybody was ready for this. And in fact, because strengths, I think, play such a pivotal role in how it is that we navigate various areas and elements of change, Kylie and I wanted to start it off with some questions to ask you and to get you into some breakout rooms, because a wise woman once said, the meeting doesn't start until you get a chance to hear your own voice in the room, in the space that we occupy.
Thank you. So as you all can probably relate to, we have all experienced a significant amount of change in the past 11 months, coming up on a year. And so we would like to just give you all a little bit of time and space to kind of talk through what some of those changes have looked like. So we put the questions in the chat, and then we'll continue to kind of put them up on the slide here. But Mike is going to put you all in breakout rooms, and we would like for you all to take, again, a few minutes to discuss these questions, and then we'll bring everyone back together and be ready to kind of share what themes came about and what you all talked about. And again, those questions are: what change have you experienced within the last 11 months? How have your peers, professors, maybe even your colleagues changed in the last 11 months? And then how have the demands of being a leader within your home, your work group, your department, your unit, or maybe other areas and roles that you have changed in the last month? Okay, great. It looks like everyone is back. So what change have you experienced within the last 11 months? What were maybe some themes that came from some of your groups?
More responsibilities.
More responsibilities,
Yeah.
definitely.
For our group, it was the lack of connectivity and the ability to build social bonds and the impact that's had on all of our professions. And we had 4 different professions. So it's the inability to develop those interpersonal relationship skills, and not only work, but in, kind of personal ways as well.
Yes. Yeah, those social, just random connections, random bump-ins, definitely. What about oh, sorry, go ahead.
Our group was to embrace the change and make it work no matter what, although we're in a pandemic, to think of it in a positive light and just embrace it. The people in our group, we have people that we got a new home, a new dog, starting a dissertation, in the heart of a dissertation, and we just decided to just embrace the change and kind of ride it out.
That's awesome,
in a
Annette.
positive way.
And Annette, if I can add to that, hello from Cleveland up there in Detroit.
Hey, you.
But we also had some trauma. We lost a faculty member. Dr. Irv McPhail passed of COVID, who was one of our faculty members who normally would travel out to meet with us here in the Midwest.
He was my chair.
Really?
My chair. Yes, Dr.
Yeah.
Irv was my chair.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
That was a leadership change for us as well.
Yeah.
Man.
Definitely. Goodness. Thank you for sharing. What about your peers and professors? What changes have you seen from them or maybe within them?
One of the changes that my group talked about was seeing more empathy in other people. So professors and peers recognizing that life happens. No one caused COVID to happen. It's just a part of life, and life happens, and it's not always easy for everybody.
Yes. Yeah, so that perspective and just being able to recognize and understand that. Yes, and grace.
And Kylie, if I can add to this as well too, we weren't just dealing with COVID here in the Midwest. We were also wrecked by a variety of uprisings, racial tension and unrest. Again, I was very happy to see that our professors, utilize that moment to talk about us and as future leaders, having these critical and difficult conversations, as well as supporting each other through that turmoil. And that was well before January 6th, by the way. Yes,
yeah, that was, and that ongoing work too of continuing to make sure that, as other things happen, that doesn't get lost, that work continues too. So thank you. What about the demands of being a leader within all of the different spaces and roles that we all have?
I'll take that one. I think as a leader, to be supportive and communicate with your staff, although, because it's new, this new work environment, it's a new remote working environment. So just providing that communication piece to it, that component of just giving your staff the information in a timely, don't always let them have to reach out to you. You as a leadership provide that information up front. Be forthright with the information. And I think they will appreciate that.
Yes, I agree. And the transparency too, because again, things were changing so fast, possibly, and a decision might be made, but then not even 24 hours later, it'd have to change or pivot. So thank you, Annette.
With that, Kylie, I think adaptability as a leader with all of those different changes, right? Being flexible and understanding that things change. And I think when everything shut down, everybody was looking to somebody else, right? Even top leaders were looking to somebody else to make a decision or make a call, or, you know, make a statement about things that were going on or being said. And so I think it was a time of great reflection, I think, as well as leaders, to say, what do I feel confident in? What do I know? Where do I have gaps in my own knowledge? But being adaptable in those times.
Yes. Yes. Adaptability has been very key, and yeah, just being nimble too. So, and I think that's a good segue into what Mike is going to talk a little bit about next, is how strengths kind of plays a role in overall personal and career well-being.
Yeah, and you know, gang, we're really excited here at K-State because we've been recognized as by Gallup as a strengths best practice university. Largely because, yes, our undergraduate students all receive a free strengths access code. Access codes are available to our graduate students. Hence, everybody on this call had access to a strengths code. But years ago, I think we made a mistake, because we used to just give the strengths access code out and we told people, take the assessment, identify your top 5. And then it was kind of like this, hey, high five for the top 5. And we weren't really intentional about aiming it at a greater purpose. And so in the last 4 or 5 years, we've really been intentional about aiming our strengths towards increased engagement and overall well-being. And when we think about well-being, Tom Rath wrote the book with Jim Harder on the 5 essential elements of well-being, to where they talk a lot about purpose, how you occupy your time, liking what it is that you do each day as a professional. You know, if you can say, I enjoy my coursework, I enjoy my curriculum, gosh, this is stimulating, your well-being and purpose is probably thriving more so than struggling or suffering. But yet right now, gosh, we've been asked to be in a socially distant environment, when yet so many of us are still yearning for social connection. And so in what ways do we still connect with our loved ones and see love in our life? And of course, as grad students, we all understand the financial stress of tuition, fees, and how is it that we can learn how to manage and or reduce economic stress, our physical well-being, good health. And when we say physical well-being, it's not necessarily working out and exercising, but do you get enough sleep to get you through the day to do what it is that you want to do? You've got energy. And then of course, community, with a lot of our nonprofits, with a lot of people on this call who volunteer, many of that volunteer hours have been suspended. And so as we think about our community and our faith-based groups, we might be still yearning for a sense of community beyond our houses and social distancing. Now, many of our undergraduates, and I'm sure people on this call too, we at K-State got together with a whole host of people from the academic side of the institution, and then also student life, to really start to think about, do those 5 pillars tell the whole story as to what we see here on campus? And we added a 6th pillar, and that was emotional well-being, to really account for the mental health of our students. You know, how it is that we can be mentally in tune and react to environmental stressors that are caused as we navigate our daily lives. And so the research on engagement tells us and reminds us that only 71% of Americans who go to work each and every day, 71% aren't engaged in their role. Gang, that means that that statistics say that only 30% of Americans are actually engaged. So that 71%, another 50 are disengaged and another 20 are actively disengaged. And we'll talk through that a little bit. But this is really what we're trying to combat, is to reduce the active disengagement in our communities, in our organizations, and in our own spheres of influence by playing to our strengths more often than not. Now, Gallup gives us some really, really awesome language to think about those 6 pillars of well-being in terms of where are we thriving, where might we be struggling, and where might we be suffering. I love the language around thriving. These professionals and students, they're loyal, they're productive, they love to go above and beyond and are less likely to have major setbacks during their professional and or college career. Think about it. If you're making progress towards your graduate degree, if you're in the midst of a dissertation, life is going to happen. It's not going to stop just so you can meet with your committee and your major professor to get everything in line. But yet when we're thriving, we have a tendency to be more resilient. And then the people not engaged, which is 50% of the workforce, these professional students may be productive, but not psychologically connected to their work. They're more likely to miss work, skip class, and or leave and transfer. Gang, Gallup did research on this in terms of disengagement that costs the companies and corporations on average $300 billion a year on people who are missing work, leaving, and or transferring. When you think about the effort, time, and energy it takes to rehire, onboard, and train new employees. And then, of course, actively disengaged. These are 20% of the population that are physically present but psychologically absent. And they're so unhappy with their work situation, and they insist on sharing their unhappiness with others. We've all been with colleagues and coworkers who insist in sharing their unhappiness with us. In fact, I'll raise my hand. I've been guilty of being actively disengaged at moments of my career as well. But Brene Brown talks about vulnerability. And I love Brene Brown's work around vulnerability, because if we really want to have an important conversation about our strengths, we've got to think about where our strengths lie within the pillars of well-being, as opposed to where are we thriving, where might we be struggling, and where might we be suffering. And so Kylie and I wanted to pause today and get you back into your same breakout rooms, because you've already kind of built up a little bit of a rapport with those who you visited with. And we'd love you to be a little vulnerable on the call tonight to actually go through. And Kylie, if you could type the 6 pillars of well-being into the chat. But what would be important then is to have an honest conversation. Where in those pillars might you be thriving? Where might you be struggling? And where might you be suffering? And we'll spend 5 minutes in a breakout room just connecting with one another, because at the end of the day, this is the important work of strengths aimed at both engagement and well-being. So gang, everybody is coming back in from their breakout rooms right now. And I would never ask you what was shared in that space, because it's confidential to you and your partners. However, I will ask, what value did you see from having those conversations with others about where you're thriving, where you're struggling, where you're suffering? And I'd love to hear from maybe 3 people on the call tonight.
I thought it was interesting when you start sharing about similar observations around Manhattan, that, you know, students from different departments, like the guys in my group, we're not any of us from the same department, but yet we mentioned some of the same items. So you kind of notice that things are affecting everyone, even, you know, no matter what department you're from, in the same way.
Yeah, Kevin, I love that. It's a realization that, hey, we're not all alone in this work that we do. Thanks for sharing. 2 others.
I would say like enjoying the trees in the forest, not just looking at the forest and being overwhelmed. So just taking things one little bit at a time instead of kind of getting stressed out.
Yeah, I love that. Lots of times we might feel overwhelmed, but then when we can categorize everything in those 6 pillars, then we've got a swim lane, and then we can kind of create some actionable items moving forward. We can, as you said, we can see the individual trees through the forest. I love that. One more takeaway.
Is it Asif? Did I say your name correctly?
That's right. I go by Asif. So I was trying to share some information on lockdowns and how traveling restrictions has impacted everybody's life. So I guess something which I feel like, I personally have been stuck for a while in India when I was traveling because of COVID restrictions and lockdowns. So, but then, as soon as the flight, restrictions were lifted, I was able to travel. So, but then overall, the overall stress of, traveling with kids, especially in the COVID situation where you're, too afraid to think about what can happen to your family, right? So that stress is tremendous.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. When we think about strengths, we've got to really be mindful of that well-being element. And I think that's a question we need to ask our colleagues, people that we might supervise more often than not. Hey, tell me about your well-being. Lots of times we go through life and say, hey, are you okay? Well, but if we can actually name it, tell me a little bit about your social well-being, your purpose. Let's talk about physical. Let's talk about community well-being. Then all of a sudden we give people a chance to really articulate what it is that they might be dealing with. And then we can coach them through utilizing their strengths to come up with strategies to find different ways to overcome challenges. And that's something that's really, really critically important to explore. Kylie's got some more questions for us to consider.
Yes, thank you. And so when thinking about personal and career well-being, one way to think about that is like, how can you leverage your strengths and or what that may look like in regards to your well-being. And so we're going to dive a little bit more into strengths now and how that does play a role and impact well-being. So how many of you can use the like the thumbs up reaction or emoji? How many of you were surprised by your top 5 strengths? You can either show thumbs up or you can use the reaction for surprise. Okay, a few. How many of you were like, yes, this is me 100% like spot on, thumbs up? Okay, seeing a few. Okay, what were some other initial reactions or responses? Okay, Michaela said somewhat surprised. Okay, what were some other responses? Were any of you kind of like, man, yes, that's true, but I didn't want that to be true? Okay, so someone said, this is not me. Okay, I see some agreement with that. After you read through the descriptions, were you a little bit more like, okay, this makes sense. The strengths gave me language to describe myself. Yes. Second thought, this might be me. Okay. Oh, great. So same top 5 as when they took it 10 years ago. And owning your strength is important yet hard. Yes, thought it was interesting that my top 5 have changed. Did any of them stay the same, Amanda, or did you have a complete change?
So my top stayed the same, and I think one other one was common in between the top 5, but the other 3 were completely different.
Okay. And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but Gallup typically says that you have about 10 strengths that really you kind of rely on more so than the others. And so those top 10, like the top 5 may change a little bit, but the likelihood that those others are still within your top 10 is typically pretty usual. But that's interesting. Any other reactions? Okay. Well, we're going to put a couple of other questions in the chat. And so this way, as we kind of continue, if questions come up or thoughts, please feel free to put them in the chat and then we can respond to them as we go along. And so those are what questions still remain about your results, the assessment, the strengths philosophy or application, and then what concerns you about the assessment or the philosophy. So did any of you have any initial questions when you took it?
I guess this is more of like how it actually like works, right? Because it's not the same questions for everybody, and it starts to tailor down based on what you've said in the past. So it's really trying to get to who you are. Is that right?
I'm going to toss that one over to Mike.
Holly, that's a great question. I've got to go back to the archives and do a little research on that before I speak out of turn. I don't recall if it populates because of each response and or if it's a long list of all responses, but yet the questions are all timed. And the reason why you still only have 20 seconds to respond to each question is largely due to the fact that talent is defined as a natural way of thinking, feeling, and behaving. And so it's a 20-second time limit because they want to reduce the tendencies that we have as, gosh, what does this look like when I'm in my personal life? What does this look like when I'm hanging out with my partner? What does this look like when I'm in the office of ORA doing programs? And so it's trying to capture your natural talent and tendencies regardless of context or situation. But Holly, I'm going to get back to that to see a little bit more about the inner workings and the mechanics of the ordering of the question.
Yeah, because there'd be one I would answer like it was really definite, right? Like you really knew. And then the next one, it would give me two, or maybe not the next one, but farther in, it would give me one that was like really harder to decide because it was based on that. It felt like it was based on that one. So I'd just be really interested.
That's a great question. And as we go along, again, if there are other questions or thoughts that come up, please put them in the chat and we will definitely answer them and respond to them as we go along. And so Mike is now going to share a really good quote.
So the gang, Peter Drucker, because I think that this quote is kind of at the heart of the strengths philosophy. Peter Drucker writes, "One should waste as little effort as possible on improving areas of low competence because it takes far more energy to improve from incompetence to mediocrity than it takes to improve from first-rate performance to excellence." Now, when I first read this quote, I'll be honest with everybody on the call, I kind of pushed back on this. And the reason why I pushed back is because my entire life, I'd always been told, play to your strengths, but know your weaknesses, turn your weaknesses into strengths and be well-rounded. And I thought, well, my gosh, if I'm not spending time and energy on my weaknesses, then I'm not really improving day in and day out. And what Peter Drucker is saying, yes, you do have to identify your weaknesses or areas of low competence, but my gosh, do not spend an entire day on that. Spend as little effort as possible on it. Instead, put more of your time, energy, and effort on areas where you already have tremendous talent, because then truly you can move from being good to being great. And the other element of strengths, which is one of the reasons why I love it, is in areas where we might have low competency, one of the strength strategies then is to find a complementary partner, right? Instead of me filling that gap, how might I find somebody else who could fill that gap for me? But again, gang, that's a philosophy and it's a part of the overall strengths theoretical element to remind us to focus on what's strong as opposed to what's wrong.
Yep, which goes kind of really well to this, also this quote or saying that strengths is about being interested, not about being interesting. And so again, it's not having to know and memorize all 34 so that I can go, oh, Mike, you have woo, which is winning others over, and that's your top strength. And that's why I like partnering with you, because you can energize people. You don't have to necessarily know that. Strengths instead gives you an opportunity to be interested in other people and to learn what are their strengths, what do they naturally do, what do they enjoy doing, what gives them purpose, and really using that as a conversation starter. So then as you start to work on projects or you build different teams, then you can go back and ask and be able to build those teams and work groups more intentionally. And so this is really the idea about being curious, which also leads into positive psychology, which Mike touched on a little bit. And I think this is my favorite kind of philosophy of strengths. And so psychologists know a lot about what is wrong with people, but much less is known about what is right with people. And if you think to our society as a whole, we're really always looking at the negative, deficit-based, weakness fixing, and strengths really challenges us to flip that and to think about what are we naturally good at? What do we, again, naturally bring to the table, and how can we leverage that and use that in all aspects and areas of our life to then enhance our overall well-being? So how many of you can like do thumbs up, because I am way guilty of this. When you got your top 5, then you were immediately like, well, what are my bottom 5? Like what's at the bottom of the list? Did anyone else do that? I can't be the only one.
Kylie, I got to be honest. I actually went ahead and bought my whole list of 34, which is also a part of the Gallup packaging. And of course, I went straight to the bottom. And on the bottom, like my bottom 2 strengths are intellection and learner. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing as a university college professor if I don't like intellection or learning? Oh my gosh, yeah. So I've been walking around campus ever since then, feeling like an imposter.
Yep. I looked at my bottom too, and I think maximizer is in one of my bottoms. And I'm like, but I think I'm able to execute and get things done. And so, yes. And so this, especially just thinking about when we are working with the students or colleagues, again, when we really start looking at what is right with people, what assets do they bring, that totally changes our conversations and the way that we see the people around us. So, to go back just a little bit really quick. So this really shows you how unique your top 5 strengths are. So there are 278,256 possible unique combinations, and then over 33 million different permutations with the unique order. And so again, this goes back to the fact that each of us brings something unique and different to the table, and celebrating that is good. So using the language, this is important because oftentimes people are kind of like, what is a talent versus a strength, and how does this all fit together? So a talent is a natural way of thinking, feeling, or behaving. And then you multiply that by the investment. So the time spent practicing, developing your skills, and building your knowledge base, which then equals your strength. So the ability to consistently provide near perfect performance. And so again, this is how leveraging your strengths, knowing your strengths can really play into your overall well-being, because when you're able to do things that you are naturally good at, it's going to increase your productivity. It's going to increase your engagement. And so all of that coupled together makes for more engaged employees. So really quick, we would like for you to think about a time when you were at your best. And when you're thinking about that, think about like, what were you doing and how did it feel? And if there were other people around you to help you or to support you. Because this really gets at that if you take a little bit of time to kind of reflect on a time when you were at your best, you will probably see that you may have not known it at the time, but you were really leveraging all of your strengths and in a space where you could use those. And so again, it goes back to that talent, which is that natural reoccurring pattern of thought, feeling, or behavior that can be productively applied. And so a talent is also often a potential strength, and again, maybe in that top 10.
Yeah, gang, and I absolutely love this, right? Because I always say you can't fake the goosebump moments. And so when I get goosebumps, right, it's a physiological reaction to something special that's happening around me. And generally, I'm utilizing more of my strengths in those moments. And so one of the strategies that Gallup will remind us of is when you are in flow, when you are really engaged and you lost track of time, take a selfie of yourself in that moment. Because the more of those moments we can stack together, then the more we can increase our moments of excellence and really say, hey, that didn't just happen because of happenstance. That happened because I leveraged my dominant talents in that moment to create the outcome. And so it's really a strategy in self-awareness. But the challenge with this becomes our focus, generally speaking, is not in our strengths. Let's use this thought process for a second. Suppose your child came home with these grades: 2 A's, a B, and a C, and a low grade such as a D or an F. Which of these grades would you deem worthy of considerable conversation? And I'd love to hear from 3 people on the call. If this was your child, what grades are you going to talk about in length?
So
I'll take that. I think I would start with the A's, and I would find out why he or she, what did you do to get that A, and compare what they did not do to get the poor grade, the D or the F. But I would encourage them, of course, to put forth that effort like you did on the subject you really enjoyed. So just a thought.
Annette, I love that. My gosh, I wish I could take my grade card home to you. That would have been a value added conversation. I would have loved that. The gang, other ideas. What grades would you focus on?
I'll jump in. I'm going to focus on the B and the D and the F. I want to know what was missing or not turned in that kept you at that B and you couldn't get an A. I want to know how many points you were away from that F that you could maybe have got a D, or that D that you could have got a C. That's what I'm going to focus on. What's missing? What did you get wrong? You know, where are those points?
Gotcha. And Jacqueline, I saw your head nodding there. What would be your response to that question?
I mean, naturally, I would probably ask them like what's going on with their D or F, because I would want to get down to the nitty gritty of like, do we need to get you a tutor? Do I need to spend more time with you? Like, how can we help you bump up? And if it's something like they just aren't interested in the class, like what can we do to try to find that interest? Like, how can we get them interested in that class? How can we switch that learning on making it fun for them? So
yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the advantages that we have is Gallup actually asked parents this same question, and here were the overarching results. 86.7% of parents spent considerable time and energy talking about the D and the F. Now, my question for you all is then this: if this was your grade card, what would you want your parents to have talked about, right? Anna, tell Anna, I see you smiling there. If this was your grade card, what do you want your folks to talk about?
Well, one of my strengths is, I haven't looked at them in a while, but it's the one about positivity, I think. And so my natural tendency is to focus on the A's and the B most likely. And I think that would be what I want my parents to focus on too, is celebrating my accomplishments. And then also, I think Annette said it about figuring out what went well in those classes to apply it to the other ones that didn't go as well.
Anna, you are absolutely right. And in fact, the research shows that if we start with the positive things, with what people are doing well, that actually starts to produce endorphins. We focus in, we listen, and then all of a sudden we can enter and engage in the conversation of, okay, now where do we also need to focus some time, energy, and effort on improvement? But I think many of us have always heard of the sandwich method of feedback: compliment, and then recommend, compliment. Gallup will say in any conversation or performance evaluation, and gosh, as grad students, right? I always feared handing all my work in to my major professor, only to then walk into her office and she's like, Mike, you got a lot of things you still need to fix before we take this to committee. And I'm like, can you just tell me one thing that I've done right? Because I'm a student, I'm still trying to figure this out myself. Now, luckily, I actually had a very encouraging major professor, but that's not the story for everybody across the board. So if we can talk 80% of the time what's right, and then 20% of the time where we need to improve, that tends to be a recipe for success. But I've got another image I want to show you here. And VL, I'm gonna start with you, my friend, because I like what you put in the chat. This was my grade card from 7th grade. What question would you like to ask me?
Again, what class did you have the most fun in? Like, what did you like the most about? Because again, I know people who get A's in their sleep and still are disengaged and don't care anything about it, and then spend a lot of time, sweat, and energy just to get that C because they find it challenging. Again, I'll stop here really quick, but again, 40% of the students who leave higher ed leave with a 3.0 GPA or higher. So we know people can do the work, but is it interesting? Is it connecting, and is it engaging?
You bet, you bet. Well, and to answer that question, I love that because, gosh, physical education, that was the class that I loved the most. But my guess is others of you have other questions you'd like to ask me. Holly, what do you want to ask?
I would ask if band was an option or if it was required, because where I went to school, band was an opt-in, but I also was forced. My mom only gave me the choice of playing a certain instrument, not the instrument I wanted to play. So I wanted to be in band, but I only wanted to play, I didn't get to play the instrument I wanted. So I would ask, was band a requirement or an opt-in kind of class?
I like that question too. Gang, if you don't mind, I'm going to tell a story here from back in the day. I actually brought that report card home, and my mom's question was, Michael, why are you earning a C- in band? First thing she said when she saw my report card. And I looked at my mom, I looked at her and I said, Mom, Mr. Burden does not like me. Took no responsibility for my education whatsoever. So small town Manhattan, mom calls Mr. Burden up. And she goes, Mr. Burden, my son is uncommunicative, and tell me, why is he getting a C- in band? Mr. Burden said, Barb, gosh, your son, he's not your daughter. My sister, 3 years older than me, first chair clarinet. I mean, she killed it, right? High expectation, high bar. But Mr. Burden said, well, Barb, the deal is, your son, of course, he plays the drums, and he's natural at picking up rhythms. But when I put sheet music in front of him, he doesn't know all the pedals. And my mom's response was, what do you mean he doesn't know the notes? He plays the drums. He doesn't even have to distinguish between A, B, C, C sharp. And he's like, I know, he's got challenges. And so Mr. Burden moved me to the bass drum. Gang, that was awesome. High energy guy like me, boom, boom. I got rocking and rolling, and then I get going too fast and mess up the whole band. So he took me off the bass drum, and then he put me onto the cymbals. And I realized why he put me on the cymbals, because all basically I did was I did this in the background. But every now and again I did get to clash him, and boy, he pointed at me. Woo! I mean, I was on it. But my mom's strategy was, Michael, you're going to come home 3204 Claflin Road, and 3 nights a week we're going to play the drums, and you're going to learn sheet music, and you're going to fix that deficit, and you're going to increase that grade, right? My mother held the purpose. I tried to play those drums so loud, but she held the purpose, and of course, we improved. Now, I tell that story because here's the point, gang. My mom never called Mrs. Mater, my social studies teacher, where I had an A+. She never made that phone call to say, what have you done to engage our son in social studies? What can myself, what can his father, what can we be doing more of? Because obviously you've found an interest and a passion, and we'd like to further cultivate that, because that could set up on a trajectory into high school, into college. Gang, interesting enough, my major at K-State, I was a dual major in criminology and geography during my undergrad years. And it was just fascinating to think. And I'm reminded of that story all the time because right now we're doing progress reports and I'm sending off information and sending emails to all the students that aren't coming to class, that aren't turning in their self-directed learning assignments. But yet I've got to ask myself, wait a second, am I giving equal time and space to my students who have done everything we've asked them to do and they've done it exceptionally well? When am I sending them emails to say, you know what, I just want to comment on your work. It is exceptional, and grad school is definitely in your future and or other opportunities. And so I share that story because when we think about strengths, we need to think about what's strong. And lots of times people in our organizations are rising stars. They get all the work. And so then our rising stars start to become our falling stars because they don't have a capacity to do everything they're asked to do. Because when they do, when they are asked to do something, they do it well and they're responsible. And so that shouldn't necessarily equate to more work. It should just equate to a workload that still allows us to thrive as we move forward. All right, gang, I got really excited about band. I need to kind of jump back on track here. The PowerPoint that Kylie and I got rocking and rolling on, this one here, this is why it's so dang critically important for you all to think about your strengths and the strengths of your team. Because organizations leadership that doesn't focus on strengths, engagement's only at 9%. But yet when we do focus on people's strengths, my gosh, we all of a sudden skyrocket to 73% engagement. And you'll get a kick out of this one because I recently took up art. And so my question to you all is, where are each and every one of you in the work that you're doing in your graduate work? Where are you on the engagement shift? Because Gallup will say that we're in one of three places and spaces. And of course, those can interchange. But I've got the person on the end of the boat who's the anchor, impeding progress. And you could look at that both positively and negatively. Sometimes it's good to impede progress, especially if there's a new change, a new initiative, a new directive that isn't aligned with mission. That'd be the first time to drop the anchor. But others of you right now on your dissertation and your graduate work, as a TA, as a research assistant, you are actively rowing right now. You are focused and you're engaged. And others of you might have just gotten back from a virtual presentation where you gave a dynamic poster presentation to colleagues. You killed your workshop. And so you're up on the top deck drinking a Mai Tai because you're just kind of cruising by right now on prior success. And so Kylie and I would love to get you into small groups right now, again, to talk through where are you in your own engagement shift. This could be work, this could be personal, this could be a whole host of things that you're responsible for, graduate work, part-time job, full-time job. Where are you rowing? Where are you drinking the Mai Tai? And where might you be impeding progress moving forward? We're going to get you into smaller groups this time, but then that way you can have a deep discussion about engagement as it pertains to your work. So we're going to get into breakout rooms. All right, so there's 2 to 3 participants per room. Let's do a full 4 minutes on where we're engaged, and then we'll come on back. VL, where are you rowing right now?
My dissertation proposal. Yeah, so phenomenological research, appreciative inquiry got me rolling.
Hey, you and I might have to compare notes. I too did a phenomenological analysis.
I am all ears.
Oh, what an analysis?
Phenomenological.
Yeah. Phenomenological. Cresswell was my best friend going through research methods for sure.
All right.
The gang, thanks for taking time to visit with one another as to where you're really engaged, where you're not engaged, where you might be drinking a Mai Tai. I think it's always a good self-reflection exercise to explore where am I right now in the many tasks that the world requires of me to navigate each and every day. I'm going to share my screen again because Kylie's got some information then about, you know, the strengths, language, and overall themes.
So this slide will show, so these are all of the 34 themes. And Mike, I just thought about this. If we send out the recording, could we also attach that one pager that has all of the 34 themes listed?
Absolutely, you bet.
And so the one pager that we're referring to is really nice because it gives like a 1 or 2 sentence summary of what each theme, kind of like what the foundation is for that theme. And so that again can help you all kind of come from a place of curiosity and being interested when you are talking to your colleagues, or hopefully some of you all maybe can share contact information during the breakout rooms, and you can keep these conversations going and can then learn a little bit more about what each other's top 5s are. I still am learning about, you know, people who I've known for a while, their strengths, because again, they show up differently for each person. And also, as again, we all spoke to a lot of the change that we've been experiencing. And so we may have been leveraging our strengths in new and different ways, or thinking about that a little bit differently too. So this again just provides a common language. And again, as you kind of start asking people what their top 5 are, you will start to learn a little bit more about what those strengths are. And then a lot of times you'll even be able to start, you know, kind of maybe, oh, I bet that Mike is, you know, also has positivity, or I bet that so-and-so has this strength. So, which also leads well into this next question. And so we will just kind of open it up for the group, and you can also use the chat. But why do you think it would be important to develop a culture of strengths in classes, in your cohorts, in graduate practicums, or even in your work team?
I would say it just be supportive, to provide that support, having like a cohort. In our cohort for the dissertation, we have support, and we have a text chat that we say good morning, good afternoon, how is it going? Okay, let's get writing. I know the Super Bowl, come on, forget the Super Bowl, let's get writing. And it's just things like that to kind of keep you focused. So I think the cohort method is very effective.
Yes, I would agree. Annette, I may need to ask if I can be added to yours, and so that every day you can be like, have you written today? Have you written today?
Now we call her Mama Cohort. Now she's since defend, and we're still working at it. But she's the one that she gets up at 3 in the morning texting everybody, okay, let's get going. But we love her dearly.
That's awesome. This is in the chat. So frame of reference for understanding each other and finding others whose strengths complement your non-strengths. Yes. Morale influences productivity, positive vibes. If you know your strengths, it may help you to delegate tasks that you struggle with. Yes. Focusing on strengths empowers people. Strengths outweigh weaknesses. Yes, these are all great. People aren't one size fits all, especially in larger groups. So honing in on strengths will make people more comfortable voicing their opinions. That's very good. Well, and what about even understanding each other or yourself? So I have harmony and empathy. And so a lot of times it would be like, oh, you're the feeler. And so it's allowed me to be able to really talk about those strengths and what I can bring. And so that has been really helpful too, because I used to see that as a negative, that I am emotional and I am a feeler and all of those things. And so I think that's one thing that this can really help you speak to your strengths and what you bring. And that is, as someone mentioned, really empowering. And so, yes, sharing your strengths can accomplish that pretty efficiently, getting to know each other in that baseline. Yes. and building really effective teams, right? So that you can be more productive, more efficient, and then again, really play into that well-being. When you're asked to do a project where you can leverage your strengths, of course, you're going to want to say yes and be all in versus something that you don't find joy or meaning in. So that's all.
Kylie, I really like the team building part. Before I came to K-State, I had the tendency to work with people who were like me because we thought alike, we worked in the same way, and I thought we were, you know, getting things done. But working in a strengths-based culture has helped me see how valuable the, you know, it doesn't matter. Achiever is one of my strengths. So I want to get it done and I want to get it done now. But understanding someone who's deliberative and thinks through things and slows me down, we always, like, if I can find somebody to work on a project with me who can slow me down, we are always going to have a better outcome. So I love the team building part of strengths.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for sharing. And so, so you may have heard before possibly like a shadow side of strengths or a balcony versus a basement sides of strengths. And so we're going to use futuristic as an example. And so again, like some of the basement sides of it could be, or some people may even say like, oh, you know, Kylie's really out there. Her head is in the clouds a lot. She's a dreamer. And so being aware of some of those basement sides of strengths is also really important, again, to be able to help you talk about your strengths in a more positive way. So some of the balcony ones would be creative, stretches others, visionary, and then also inspires others. And so I, like Andrea, also have achiever. And so one of the basement sides of my strength is that I always think I can get one more thing done. And believe it or not, I can still be late to Zoom meetings because I'm trying to get that one last thing done. And so being aware of that too helps me to be able to know, like, you have to stop. Like, if I'm walking across campus, like 5 minutes before, if it's a Zoom, like, you know, a few minutes before, but just being aware of that can also help you, again, kind of talk about the balcony and making sure that you are up on the balcony side of your strengths and not dwelling or spending time down in the basement side. The other nice thing, and many of you have talked about this, about building effective teams or kind of being intentional and finding people who have complementary strengths. So Gallup put the 34 themes into 4 different domains. And there's also a map that we can show you at the end that will have all the 34 strengths. So you can, again, kind of plot yours out to see where they are. But those are executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. And so again, sometimes people get a little bit hung up because they may be like, oh, well, I don't have any in relationship building. So that means I'm not good at relationship building. And that's not really what this means, right? It's more so that your strengths may be in the different domains, and you probably, again, have relationship building in your top 10. But again, being aware of that can help you build your team and to find people who may have those strengths that really fall within that relationship building. So for example, I think I only have one strategic thinking. So when building teams, I usually look for people who have more of those strengths.
So I just unmuted myself. Another thing that's really kind of cool to think about, right? Gallup gives these 4 domains, and then they kind of give us an operational definition of each of the 4 categories. My talents lie in influencing and relationship building. And what that really helps me understand is, yes, I'd love to give an organization more exposure. I'd love to have a story that I can tell to reach a broader audience, right? I get excited for orientation and enrollment because it's an opportunity to talk to what I would say are about 3,500 of my best friends, or at least soon to be best friends coming to K-State as incoming freshmen. But I understand that not everybody gets excited about orientation and enrollment days. But what it also allows me to do is I can't just say, I'm going to focus primarily on influencing and relationship building and not be an executor. Because at the end of the day, relationships still matter to me. And so I will try to crawl through broken glass to execute and get things done, even though I don't have high talent in that domain. But if I fail to get something done, gosh, that could hinder the relationship. And so when I think of task completion, I think about doing things to improve the overall relationship between myself and the Staley School of Leadership Studies or external constituents. And so our hope here is that utilizing this resource here on K-State's campus as you navigate your graduate program of study, we're here to help, right? We're here to help you increase engagement and overall well-being through a strengths process. And myself and Kylie, we've got these team grids that we'd be happy to send out where you can actually track the strengths of everybody on your team. This was a team grid from years ago in the Staley School of Leadership Studies, and I highlighted my strengths and then also Lori Niffin's strengths, who at the time was a building manager and academic advisor at the Staley School. And I'll share this story. I'll never forget a student called me up and said, Mike, I'd love to get into your class. And I was like, hey, absolutely. Give me 24 hours. I'll call you back with good news. Well, my next call was to Lori, and I said, Lori, student, he's a sophomore, wants to get involved in leadership studies. Can we make it happen? And Lori said no. Gang, I'm not proud about this, but my next phrase out of my mouth was, Lori, we're the Staley School of Leadership Studies. Let's exercise some leadership and make it happen. And all of a sudden, I mean, Lori was triggered. She was irritated, she was upset, and she responded back with, Mike, no. And the reason why no is you don't realize that there's been 6 or 7 other students who've called trying to get into your class, and the response has been no. And so we've got to work through their schedule to see if they can find another section or another semester. I don't think that it's fair that just because a student called you directly, they get into your class when others have had to be on the wait list or find another semester. And in that moment, I realized, okay, she's right. Now I still had to call that student back, disappoint him at a rate that he could absorb. We found an alternative plan. Life was good. He still made progress on his leadership minor. But after that interaction, I went back to the team grid and I thought, gosh, what did I miss? And in that moment, Lori has 4 out of her top 5 strengths in executing. And many of you have probably already picked up on this. She leveraged her strength of consistency, which if you look at that definition, Gallup defines the strength of consistency as people especially talented in seeing equity and fairness across the board. And so she just wanted to make sure that we had fair enrollment procedures for all students. And I needed to check myself because at the end of the day, I see the world through my 5 strengths, and I need to be mindful of seeing the world through a host of strengths because Lori was truly leveraging her strengths to make leadership studies fair and equitable for all. And that was a miss of mine with adaptability and positivity. And so that gets back to Andrea's point again about building together that strengths culture and really working with people that have different talents and different strengths than you do. And so Kylie and I's hope is that you all find your own strength story, whether it be individual or collective in the work that you do. And just a couple of strategies to maybe help you get there is speed, right? People who use their strengths many times a day learn to roll faster and adapt to change more quickly. Productivity and precision. People who use their strengths many times produce significantly more and with better quality. So as you're thinking about your dissertation, as you're thinking about your graduate work, then it also talks about the longevity and attendance, build stronger relationships, and then overall engagement, which we've talked a lot about through this presentation. Now, here are a couple of strategies. Number 1, take pictures of your best self. You've got a cell phone, take a lot of selfies of you in your own moments of excellence, and or find novel ways to use your top strengths. Tom Rath used to say, we could look at our strengths collectively, or we could look at our strengths individually. For instance, if I've got to go cut wood, I'm taking the truck. If I've got to get a whole bunch of people at one place, I'm taking the minivan. And if I've got to get somewhere fast, I'm driving the sports car. And so how can you pull out one of your 5 strengths to align it with an existing challenge? Collaborate, right? Be a great sidekick. I think I found my strength sidekick on this call. Cheryl and I, we need to team together. So Cheryl, I'll be following up. And then last but not least, the more we exercise leadership and affirm people's strengths, we make hope happen for someone else. And Shane Lopez, leading researcher on hope, defined hope as tomorrow will be better than today. And number 2, I have the power to make it so. I love that definition. Hope. Tomorrow will be better than today, and I have the power to make it so. And Shane talked about the power to make it so through our agency, which he termed his strengths to overcome obstacles to still reach goal attainment. And so, gang, with that, myself and Kylie, gosh, here's our contact information. We are both, Kylie is currently navigating her graduate degree, her doctorate, and I did mine light years ago, but we'd be more than happy to help you as you think through some of your challenges through a strengths-based lens. The other element, and available to everybody on this call, if you email me directly, I can get you in contact with some of our strengths peer coaches. So if you really wanted to take a 45-minute session to hone in on your 5 as it pertains to well-being or an existing challenge, our undergraduate students are trained strengths peer coaches, and they can work with you to ask some questions as you think about your strengths. And I'll tell you, our undergrad peer coaches, they absolutely love talking with graduate students. Every time they get a graduate student in a peer coaching session, I get an email saying, Mike, that was awesome. I talked with a student who's motivated. They know a lot about themselves. They know what they want in life. And they were really engaged. Where Mike, sometimes the undergrad students, you send them to me, they don't even remember their top 5 strengths, and it's a struggle. So I say that because our peer coaches love talking to the cohort who's on this call tonight. And with that, I'll stop the share. Kylie, what did we miss?
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. I think from everything we talked through, I think that was pretty much what we wanted to cover, but are there any other questions, comments, thoughts?
I just like to say this was fantastic. I don't know if it's because I'm in the middle of my dissertation and I've been doing things with reporting findings and so forth. And this has just been so refreshing, and you just don't know, I really appreciate being on this Zoom tonight. Thank you guys.